Well, hello there, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Dance Studio Scaled podcast. If you are new here, hello, welcome. Thank you for joining. I'm Jen Dalton, and this podcast is for dance studio owners who want to grow their business with more clarity, with a strategy, and a bit more ease along the way. Today's episode is why do so many successful dance studio owners still feel like something is missing? Now, I am talking about studio owners who on paper are doing well. They have solid enrollments, they have a team, they have a reputation in their community that they've built over years. If you looked at their studio from the outside, you would think, yep, she has it sorted. And yet privately, there's this nagging feeling that something isn't quite right, that they should be feeling more settled, more satisfied, more in control than what they actually do. That the hard work that they have put in should be translating into something that feels better than this. Now, I personally think that this is a little bit of a trait of many of us, particularly the entrepreneurial side of us who are continually striving to find the next thing or the bigger thing or the better thing. I just think it's ingrained in us, it's in our genes, which is why this conversation is so important, because we do have to question why we're questioning ourselves on this. So if this sounds familiar to you, then this episode's for you. And I want to walk you through why I think it happens. Because once you understand it, it actually stops feeling like a personal failing and then starts feeling more like a solvable problem. So let's get into it. Now, the first thing I want to say is that the dance industry has handed us a very specific set of metrics for what success looks like. And most of them are external, or they're visible or countable. For example, things like, well, how many students do you have? What's your revenue? What profit do you make? How big is your team? How many trophies did you win? How many exam students got top marks? And of course, those things do matter. But here's what they don't measure. They don't measure how you actually feel at the end of the week. They don't measure whether you're sleeping well or laying awake, running through problems at 2 a.m. They don't measure whether the business is supporting your life or consuming it. They don't measure whether you feel like a leader or someone who is just barely keeping up with the thing that you've built. So what happens is studio owners hit the numbers, or they hit their goal of 200 students, 400 students, or teams of 15, 20, and they wait for that feeling to arrive. The feeling of, I've made it, that feeling of I can finally breathe, I can settle, of the work finally paying off in a way that feels like something. And when that feeling doesn't come, or it comes really briefly and then disappears into the busyness of life and the business, then they start wondering what they're doing wrong. And I just want to be really clear, you're not doing anything wrong. The metrics you were handed just weren't measuring the right things. And a studio can look very successful and still be extremely hard to run. And the thing that makes it hard is not always flexible with more students or more revenue. In fact, sometimes more students just means the same pressure and the same problems, but spread a little thinner. And that's not growth. That is just more of the same thing at scale, and that's hard. Okay, the second reason I see this happening, and this one's quite common, is that the business grew, but the structure around it, the foundation around it just didn't keep up. Now, most studio owners will build their studio the way most of us build anything, right? This was me as well. You do it by figuring it out as you go. You started with a passion for dance. You have maybe a handful of students and a lot of determination and motivation and excitement. You made decisions based on what was in front of you. You solved problems as they came up. You just did what worked. And that approach did get you somewhere real. it got you to where you are right now. But then a studio with 80 students and a studio with, say, for example, 400 students are fundamentally different businesses. They require a whole lot of difference, including leadership, different systems. But most importantly, it requires a different version of you. And what I see again and again is that studio owners are running a 2026 business on a 2018 structure. The enrolments grew, the team grew, the pressure grew, but the foundations underneath it, the systems, the role clarity, the decision-making structure, the way you, the studio owner, shows up, stayed the same. And it's not that business isn't working, it's that it outpaced the infrastructure it was built on originally. And as the owner, is that feeling of the gap. They're feeling that gap every single day, even if they can't always name it. And I had a conversation recently with a studio owner, and she runs a beautiful studio. She's got over 300 students, a team that is working really well together at the moment. And she's super proud of the culture she's built. And she said to me, I don't know why I feel so flat. Everything's fine. I just feel like I'm running on a treadmill and I just can't get off it. And I've seen how hard this studio owner has worked, and she's put in the time and the effort to be where she is. And again, it's that constant need to be, what's the next thing? I've done it, but you're not even spending time celebrating it. And that's the gap, right? The business has grown, but the structure didn't come along with it. And somewhere in that gap, the joy of the work quietly disappears as well. But the good news is this is fixable, and we will come back to that. Okay, moving on to the third thing. And if you've been around me for a while, you know I speak about this a fair bit, and it's because it's something that I experience myself personally still to this day, and it's decision fatigue. And if you've never heard of that term, I just take a moment to sit with it, because I think you will find that it's familiar for you somewhere in your life. Now, decision fatigue is what happens when you have been the answer to every question in your business for so long. For example, what music does the hip hop class use? Ask Jen. Can this student move up a level? Ask Jen. What do we want to do about this parent complaint? Ask Jen. Should we add Saturday class? Ask Jen. What's the password to the booking system? Ask Jen. And then as another layer, if you're teaching as well, you're having to make decisions on music and themes and choreography and keeping your students happy and making sure they're achieving their goals. The costumes, there's another one as well. Like, there are so many decisions that we are having to make. And individually, yep, they're small and they're manageable and they're fine. But when you, as the leader of a business, are making 40, 50, 80, even more decisions a day, decisions of all sizes and weights, then your cognitive capacity doesn't have a chance to recover. And by the time you sit down at the end of the day to think about the strategy or the big picture planning or what you actually want for the next 12 months to look like, then you just have nothing left. Your tank is empty. And what fills that space is often a kind of low-grade exhaustion that never really goes away. Even with a weekend off, it's not usually enough, because it's not a physical tiredness, it's the tiredness that comes from being responsible for everything all the time and very little room for your own thinking. And this is one of the most underrated challenges of running a dance studio, I truly believe. And it's almost just not spoken about in the business coaching world, because it's not as visible or exciting to talk about as marketing funnels and costumes and music and scaling strategies. But it's one of the biggest reasons successful studio owners feel like something is missing, because when you're running on empty, it's very hard to feel good about anything. So even the things that are actually going well. Okay, the fourth reason. You can have 500 students, you can have a full team, you can have a wait list. You can have a reputation that you have spent years building and still feel completely alone in the decision making. Leadership loneliness is a real thing, and having all these people around you, you can still feel very alone. And it's because nobody else in your world is navigating exactly what you are. Now, your partner might be supportive, but if they're not in the industry or have an underlying understanding, it's tricky. Your friends, they will care about you, but they can't really follow the nuance of what it means to manage a team of casual dance teachers, or having teachers not turn up, or handling the parent who is unhappy about exam results or a costume, or work out whether it's the right time to open a second location. Like, these decisions that you are having to make on your own, it really highlights how on your own you are at times like this. And you can have staff around you and who really care about your studio. But there are certain things that you cannot bring to them. You cannot ask them. There are things you can and you can ask opinions on, but there are things you can't. And that needs to stay. There's things that you need to keep at your particular leadership level. So a lot of the thinking happens internally. It happens in the car on the way home, 6 a.m. before the day starts. Maybe you've got the 3 a.m. wake-ups. It's that kind of isolation. It's the quiet. It's ongoing. It's hard to explain. It just wears on you. So even if you're an introvert, which I am, my hand is up, even if you prefer to think things through on your own, there is a difference between choosing solitude and having no one around who truly gets it. And I think this is one of the most under-acknowledged parts of running a dance studio at this particular leadership level. The external success can actually make it harder, not easier to talk about, because people look at what you've built and they just assume that, well, she must be going okay. He's clearly got it all together. Look at what they're building. Look at how successful they are. They must have a great team around them. And they are good, but also it's hard. So both of these things can be true at once. And the fifth piece, and I think this one ties it all together, is the absence of support that is actually built around your specific situation. Now, here's something that happens almost every single time I meet a studio owner for the first time. At some point in that conversation, they will almost always say, look, I just want you to know that my studio is different. Like, the community that I have, the community that I've built, the standard we hold, the culture, our students, our level, like, it's like no other. There's no other. Even if you're in a saturated area of studios, they will say to me, mine is different. And you know what? They're right. Every studio that I've worked with is genuinely different. They do have different communities. They have different demographics, different histories, different goals, different pressures. The dance industry is not centralized or standardized, as we know, and neither are the people running the studios within it. And I know this firsthand because I felt exactly the same way about my own situation and my own studios. I believed, and I still do believe, that what we built was specific and special and couldn't be slotted into a generic framework without losing something important. And here's the thing, that belief is actually the reason of why I do what I do today. Exactly why I'm sitting here, why I work with the studios I work with, and how I do that, how I run my mastermind, how it's very bespoke. Because when I was at that point of knowing I needed support, that proper support, because I was on my own, I was making all these decisions, I was exhausted. I just couldn't find what I was actually looking for. I checked out online, I checked out programs, I checked out group courses, I checked out different coaching options. And I kept thinking, this is not built for me. Like, this is built for a version of a studio owner that isn't quite me, in a business that isn't quite mine, with goals that don't quite match mine. I just didn't want to join a group program. I didn't want to sit alongside people. And I know, and I want to say, like, community definitely has its place, definitely. But right there and then where I was, I didn't want to sit alongside people at a completely different stage, like working through at the same curriculum together that wasn't designed for my specific situation. Now this might sound lazy, but I didn't want to read a course. I didn't want to have to decipher what was relevant and then figure out how to implement it myself on top of everything else that I was carrying. What I wanted, what I genuinely wanted, I just was someone who knew me, who knew my business, who understood my specific goals, my specific market, and specific challenges I was navigating. So someone, and I was happy to pay and willing to pay someone who could look at what I had built and say, here's what I see, here's what I do, and here's the next step for you. Off you go. I wanted to pay for the direct route. I didn't want to spend months consuming content and then working out how to apply it. I wanted someone to hand me the directions and say, off you go. Do this, not because it works for everyone, but because it will work for you. And that's what bespoke support actually looks like. And it's really genuinely rare. It takes longer to give. It requires a depth of experience that goes beyond the general frameworks and theories that everyone can search up now. We can search online, we can search AI. But that's what I was looking for, was much harder to package up and market it as a course. But it's the thing that actually moves the needle. So this is the thing that if you're sitting in a plateau right now and you're like, I've been doing this for so long, I'm not seeing any light at the end of the tunnel, you need to start doing things differently. And this could be the next step for you. Studio owners who have consumed enormous amounts of business content and they're still feeling stuck. Those who the moment that someone sits down with them and looks at their specific situation, they have a breakthrough, and no amount of general education would have been able to give them that. And it is not about a lack of knowledge. It is just that they didn't have the right strategy for them in their business at that particular stage. So let's come back to where we started. Why do successful studio owners feel like something is missing? Because the metrics they were handed don't measure what actually matters. Because the business grew faster than the structure around it. Because decision fatigue is real and accumulative and almost just never spoken about. Because leadership is a lonely job and you don't have the right people around you. And because the support most people have access to is too generic to move the needle at a level that they're operating at. Now, none of this is a character flaw. None of it means that you are not capable or not cut out for this. In fact, I'd actually argue that feeling this gap, being able to name it, even if it's just vaguely, is actually a sign that you are ready for the next step. You've outgrown where you are, and that's not a problem. That's just information. So the question is, what do you do with it? A lot of studio owners that I work with, the answer is getting into a room, getting into a space or a conversation with a business bestie, with studio owner friends. Speak to others who genuinely understand this industry and this particular level of leadership. We need to remember that this really is just not a one-size-fits-all mentality. You need a strategy that will impact you specifically. And they're the conversations you need to be having. That's the work I do. And I genuinely, I love it so much because I can see the genuine growth of each individual that I work with. And not only in business, but in themselves and in life. Honestly, so many of my clients now, we speak a little bit about business growth, but there is so much about individual and personal growth that comes with it, because that's what happens when you get to this particular level and you're ready to step in and truly scale. The work becomes about you. Now, if today's episode has felt like it was speaking to you, then I just encourage you to listen in each week. These episodes are designed to be strategic, simple to follow, I don't deal with the fluffy, I'd say feel good. I hope you feel good after listening to these things, but it really is just about information and facts to help get you to where you're going and to enjoy the journey on the way. So remember, the gap that you're feeling right now, it's not permanent. And it is, in most cases, very, very solvable. So hang in there, reach out if you have any questions. Follow along. If you don't already follow the podcast, I would love you to follow that, and also on Instagram. That would be great as well. Jen Dalton is my Instagram handle, and reach out, message me. Let me know how you're feeling. All right, everyone, thank you for being here, and I will see you next week.